Welcome to This is Podcasting. I'm your host, Connor, and I have my co-host, Jaden, here.
Yep. And with us is former guest, Calvin.
How's it going?
So we just liked having him on as a guest so much last time, we figured we'd just keep him. He was on our episode where we talked about Under the Skin, and we just had a blast, all of us together, and so he's going to be on. He's going to be joining us. I love having him on. Great insights. He's got great suggestions on other movies to watch, too, and he just knows so much. He's just like this fountain of knowledge for us.
Yeah, he has mass knowledge on films.
Yeah.
And I just love listening to myself talk.
Perfect.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's what we're all here for.
Not really. It's sexually torture, but
No, then I think, we're all set. And if you weren't into jazz by our awesome opening music there, you will be after this, because we're talking about Whiplash, which is just a great film.
Fantastic.
And it's based off of kind of a jazz musician, a drummer. And I think we'll let Jaden, he's got a good background on the film we're going to be going over.
So 2014's Whiplash, starring Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, follows the story of jazz drummer Andrew Neiman, who had just gotten to school with, I guess we'd say, like, top school in the country. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, it says
that.
he says it's the best school in the country.
Yeah,
like,
so-
best music school.
And he's trying to be, like, the world's greatest drummer. So he's obsessed with becoming the best drummer. I mean, he's so obsessed that he practiced till his fingers bleed. And J.K. Simmons is co-starring as his instructor, Terrence Fletcher, who teaches as if he was the leader of the Third Reich. This dude's awesome. I mean, J.K. Simmons is absolutely just stellar in this role. Miles Teller, pretty much hate him and everything else he's in besides this movie. He also got punched in the face last night in a Hawaiian bathroom.
Like literally last night?
Yeah, last night he's hanging out there in Rogers in Hawaii, and
So this is May 28th. He was punched.
rest in peace, Harambe. It's been 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
oh my god, that's so funny because too we were talking earlier in this week how we think he has such a punchable face.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he is, and he got punched in the face.
It's prophetic.
Yeah. So in this movie, there's a massive power struggle between Miles Teller's character and J.K. Simmons' character. Even though they both roughly have the same goal, which is to be the best they can be, or have J.K. Simmons be the best that Miles Teller can be. J.K. Simmons' character is super harsh on students. He tries to push them to be their best, calling them fuckwads and retards and all kinds of inappropriate things.
This movie is worth watching just to hear
Yeah.
J.K. Simmons berate people.
It is fantastic.
His dialogue is incredible.
Yeah. And so throughout the story, Neiman finds himself needing Fletcher's approval more and more throughout the film. So he eventually goes through, and they're doing a concert, and dude gets into a car accident, and he's late, and he's like, "Oh, you can't fucking play because you're late," even though he was in a car accident. He still shows up. Like, I mean, it's a wild movie. It's a crazy ride. I mean, at the end of it, J.K. Simmons ends up losing his job because Miles Teller, tells on him because it's kind of a little bitch move, if you ask me.
Yeah.
That part
I mean,
was-
I think it's justified, but
Yeah.
I think you end up
I mean, you just compared him to the Third Reich. Yeah,
That's-
but like
that's
they had
fair.
redeeming qualities.
in some way you end up liking J.K. Simmons so much in
much,
this movie
yeah.
just because his performance is so great that when he's like in a bad way and he gets he loses his job, you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
this poor guy, but he's awful.
He is actually kind of a bad dude. But I mean, he pushes his students to be the best they can be, and anyone who's had the coach like that knows how terrible that can be, or awesome. So Fletcher gets fired, and then he meets Newman in a bar, and they decide he tells Newman that he's throwing a show or a concert or whatever, and he would like him to come drum for him. Well, he tells him like, hey, it's all the songs we learned in the class and shit, and then come halfway through the concert or so, it turns out that was bullshit. And Fletcher's just trying to ruin his career.
Yeah, it's definitely a revenge move at the
Yeah.
end for sure.
But then, I mean, it becomes awesome. That is for sure.
Yeah,
That's-
we'll get into it more,
Yeah.
but
One of the best endings I think I've ever
I was
seen.
gonna say
Yeah.
that this is, I think, of all the movies I've watched, like in the last maybe 10 years, this is one of my favorites.
Oh, I would say I mean, besides maybe Spider-Man 2, 2004, this might be the best movie to come out in the past 20 years.
But the ending. Because I
joke.
watched it again today, and I was like, I'm like tapping my foot, and I'm literally like getting chills watching this. And this movie is great despite it being about jazz, which is the worst form of music, I think.
It's pretty bad.
But it was completely enthralled. I was absolutely into this movie from like start to finish, and it's like I think the least interesting subject matter ever. But Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons are amazing in it, and they're like captivating. And I was so into this movie from start to finish.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I What was actually interesting to find out was it was originally a short that the director Damien Chazelle did with J.K. Simmons in the Terrence Flesher role.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and that's how they he did it because he was trying to get funding for La La Land, but nobody wanted to give him any money for it. So he did that as more like a little project, and that's how they got funding for the feature film was from that.
I didn't realize J.K. Simmons was in it, but I did see
Yeah.
that he had done the short first, which I think is I know it was like a Sundance Film Festival like short, and it got like all this acclaim, and so then he got funded for pretty much whatever he wanted. And yeah, speaking of, he did do La La Land, and he also did First Man, which is like that Neil Armstrong movie that came out in 2018.
I have
So
not
he's
seen
like he's done some pretty good things.
Oh,
Like
I also
since
have
doing
not seen
Whiplash.
La La Land.
Oh yeah, he won the best director Oscar for that film
Yeah.
at age 32.
That's the one with Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, dude,
It's just like
I'm
that's
sure
stuff.
I'll watch that. at
It's
some point.
fantastic. That's one like the musical genre is one that I have a lot more respect for after school. Something that I didn't care about before, but it's just an amazing film form.
Hugh
That's
Jackman.
really fun.
Oh my god, I haven't seen Greatest Showman, and I don't plan on.
I have
watching
seen it, and I'm not a fan.
Yeah. But yeah, I always like to give the stats on these movies. I just think it's like a fun little thing to get into. So we were talking about funding. This had a $3.3 million budget, and it ended up making $49 million box office, which, so, I mean, it's,
It was a limited release too, wasn't it?
I think it was limited and then it was wide.
Yeah.
Uh, but still, like, that's a huge recoup on your cost. And this is not an incredibly expensive movie to film in general. I mean, it's not like you have crazy special effects or anything, and it's just
Not
jazz
like
musicians.
Thanos is coming down. playing
Yeah,
drums
And
or
really
anything.
small set designs. The number of people that you need for each shot. I'd say the probably the most complicated being either the final scene or the one in the jazz festival. Everything else was shot in the school, in the apartment, maybe the
Small
bus.
rooms.
Well, I take that back. I mean, there was the car crash.
That's got to be the most expensive
Expensive,
scene of the
yeah.
whole movie, and it's like quick, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's always cool to see these movies that are like these like kind of small budget, but they ended up like making all this money back, and I
Yeah.
think it really speaks to like that. I think you can have a successful film that is not financially successful, but it's cool to see these ones that are like lower budget, and then they like make a bunch back.
Yeah.
I think it's cool, especially like because like I said, I don't love jazz, but I love this movie, and
Yeah.
I don't think this is a movie that appeals to a ton of people, but it obviously like it did financially pretty well, and I think it's cool that like something like this gets put out in general.
Yeah, and it's the difference between high concept and execution. Execution always wins out. The only time that concept wins out over execution is when it also executes well. There's not really a film that you're gonna find that's great that doesn't execute well. So when you take a simple story and you just focus on the basics, like the same thing with Under the Skin, you took this giant film about mass farming, about class politics, and you boiled it down to a character study, and it worked so well because you did what you could with the medium and told the perfect story.
And it does it. I mean, we already talked about this movie, but it does it with like very little dialogue too.
Mhm.
Like it's a very well done movie.
Yeah.
You should listen to our other episode about it. It's great.
It is good. There's boobs in it.
So the
That's-
movie, I like how it starts out. So Miles Teller's character is just like practicing, and it doesn't like give you any background. You don't know he's in school right off the bat. You just see him. He's in a room practicing playing drums.
Oh, you hear the music first. You just hear the drums, and it's black.
Yeah, and then it just pops up the title, and so he's playing, and then just J.K. Simmons' characters comes in.
Well, actually, that's one of my favorite. The idea of the camera as a character, as perspective. So we open up from the black, and it's just instantly you can see Miles Teller down the hall, and we're at the end, and the camera slowly dollies forward until we're just outside of the door frame, and then I can't remember if J.K. Simmons says something or if Miles Teller notices he's there. He looks at the
Yeah.
camera, and it's that switch of the camera was always He was basically J.K. Simmons' character, but you were seeing it from his perspective, and that
Yeah.
was the whole opening, which was that's a really fun thing.
No, yeah, and just the way he's introduced, I think, is awesome. Because he's like, "Why'd you stop playing?" He's like, I'm here till. He's like, "I'm looking for players." You know that, right? And then Miles Teller's just he starts playing drums again. He's like, "Did I tell you to start playing?" He's like, "Your response is to just be this like he calls him something
A wind
vulgar.
up monkey.
Yeah, like he calls him like a baboon or something. Yeah, and then he's like he starts playing again, and he's just like, and so you just get this immediate like introduction to him. He's like, "Oh, this guy is an asshole," like
Yeah.
right off the bat. Like there's no like, "Oh, his name's Fletcher." He's not like,
Yeah.
I'm this teacher. I run the studio band. I'm looking for drummers. Like
Standing
show
there
me what you
being
got.
kind of creepy.
He just walks in and
Yeah.
he's like a dick right away, and so it's just like
Yep.
a great introduction to his character. He's like no nonsense right off the bat, and I love that.
Yeah, and a big technical thing. I'd say that the largest technical focus in the whole film is lighting. Um, how he walks out of the shadows of the door frame as kind of this mysterious, almost godlike. I mean, that's a big motif throughout the whole film is how he's basically venerated as some demigod to all of his students, and him walking out of the shadows like that.
Third Reich.
That's
I love that.
a fair comparison. It's not.
So he listens to Miles Taylor's character play a little bit, and then he just like walks out of the room because he's like, okay, this kid's no good. He's
And it's like disappears.
and then he walks back in, and you see like the joy on
It just grabs
his
his jacket.
his face, and he's like, oh, he came back. Like I must be a good drummer. He's like, oops, forgot my hat.
Yeah.
And then leaves. Like it's great, and I think it sets up the whole movie. The whole thing is about like he's just kind of like messing with him and doing all this stuff to like push him to be a better musician, and it starts like right in the first scene. He like he doesn't like encourage him. He's not like he's not like a loving father figure or something like that.
He's basically torturing him mentally
Yeah,
at that point.
I mean he's
he
doing.
knows what he's doing.
He's very aggressive and he's like he's pretty mean about everything he does. But the whole point is to like to push him to be a better musician and there's a lot of times where he kind of uses Neiman's background against him, which I think is great.
Fucking mom walked out on you,
Yeah.
no wonder. Like,
Yeah.
holy
Speaking
shit.
of, we'll get more into archetypes when we talk
Yeah.
about the lighthouse, but I love how they use the archetype of the old man father figure and twisted it to set up this narcissistic abusive relationship that he has with his students. So he comes on as the mentor, as the one with wisdom, just have fun, we're here to learn, that type of thing. But and he has a few lines that are actually prophetic in nature, which is another aspect of the archetype of the old man. But how he turns that on its head is it's what makes him so good at being abusive, and what makes the role so much fun is it's not even necessarily just the shouting. Anybody can just get up and shout sometimes. It's how he can play both sides of the loving, caring, empathetic teacher and the complete asshole.
Yeah, I think there'd be people who watch this movie and think he's just being mean for the sake of it. And then you find out later on he's like not really. He's like I that's how I'm pushing you. Like that's my goal is to make the best musicians I can have. And I think if you go into this and you don't realize that, then he just seems like a dick the whole movie.
I mean,
But at the same time, it's you look at the last scene, where he basically self-sabotages his own band just to put one over on a kid.
Yeah, right.
Like it's weird how
the kid ruined his career. I mean,
yeah, well, no, I mean, I wouldn't say that. Like the thing is like he just didn't learn from his own mistakes, and like if you're gonna let a little kid ruin your career and then continue to ruin your career by ruining his, that kind of self-sabotage is what makes him so crazy. And it's fun looking at the mirror image of Neiman and Fletcher, how they both self-sabotage for what they think is their ultimate purpose.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
which is one thing I took from this movie is there's a massive power struggle between the two the entire film.
Yeah.
And pretty much Fletcher, owns him for 95% of the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's really about another archetype you could look at is self and shadow self here. Shadow self being Fletcher and reflected back against Neiman. Neiman is still just burgeoning. He wants to be this perfectionist, and he's letting out bits of the Fletcher persona. In why he breaks up with Nicole is because that is like Fletcher is his shadow self, this really like driven madman that
Right.
he just tries to keep under wraps.
I forgot all about the girlfriend.
Oh, I have a good note about the girlfriend.
Yeah, but I just felt like she's kind of lame.
Uh,
Yeah, she's not really like a character as much as she is a function.
Obstacle, or
Yeah. What it's
I think she's in the movie to push Neiman's character to like realize like, okay, if I want to be a serious drummer, like I'm gonna get rid of everything else that's a distraction. She's only in the movie to be essentially broken up with and cut out of the movie.
Yeah, and if you want to get in feminist theory, like she's like a woman in a refrigerator. I don't know if you've ever heard about that.
What the fuck?
It's a reference in comic books. Generally,
Isn't that a Hawkeye? No, I don't remember what it is. I know what you're talking about though.
yeah. So women in refrigerators, a giant list of female characters that have basically been killed as the significant other to a main superhero to progress their narrative. And it's just it's a massive list. It's a really old trope because you have so many stories told from male perspective, and that's really what all she's focused. It's not like
It's from a Green Lantern comic I remember now, but it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah,
your
it is.
regular Green Lantern. It's like one of the other Green Lanterns
One
that
of
they
the
try to
18
bring.
other ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have.
yeah.
So yeah, but it's from that. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking
She's
about.
killed and stuffed in a refrigerator, and that's
which
where
is
you get the name.
insane. Like,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, as a so that's all she really functions as. Is she's not even meant to be a character, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, because I feel like there could have been a better way to move Neiman's character arc without introducing a an empty female character for that sense. Like really, like it would have been better like using his dad. The whole relationship with his dad is so interesting because
It's awkward.
Yeah.
well, it's not even so much awkward as it's like he's looking for validation. He's looking for like, I want to be seen and there are some clunky aspects in the dialogue like I just don't understand you. But what's so strange is like his dad comes off as such a warm, loving, caring person. Like, yeah, go pursue your dreams. Let's go watch movies together. Like he fills the role that Fletcher seems to be filling for Neiman so well. I struggle to see why why he looks to Fletcher's approval, because normally it would be something to replace a father's love.
I got a sense that like the father was supportive, but like he didn't get it, and Neiman was kind of maybe getting tired of trying to explain why what he was doing was so important to him, or why like him being like. There's a scene where he's having dinner with his dad, and they're with like some family friends.
And the football player.
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah.
And he starts talking about. He's like, "Oh, I made like I'm like a regular. I'm a member of the studio band."
And they have no fucking idea.
And they immediately start talking over him. And like I think I like that scene a lot because like I've been in that position before. Like I think everyone has, where you're trying to explain like why what you're doing is important. Why not only it's important to you, but why you think it's important in general. Like why other people should appreciate it. But people just don't get it.
Well,
So,
yeah, it's not like being an artist of any kind, musician or any other kind of artist, is it's not really reflective on like the way you feel to like mass society. Like I think that's why like the football thing is huge because like most Americans love football, especially dads. Like they want to see their kids.
Yeah, because one of the family friends, his son is on the football team. They have another son who's like running mock UNs or something like that.
Yeah.
And they totally gloss over Neiman, and they're like, "Oh yeah, look at how good our football player's son." And then he's like, "Yeah, Division III."
Yeah,
And I love that.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's like, you guys have no idea like what I'm doing here.
He's like, "This is literally the best school. I'm the drummer at the best school for this job, and like, you guys don't get how big a deal this is." And then I love the other dad. He's like, "Oh, you don't have many friends, do you?" He's like, "Nope, didn't see a need for them." He's just like, and that's kind of later in the movie, and it builds to that like where Neiman is really like he's so laser focused on like being one of the great jazz drummers, which I think is awesome. And I just want to go to like kind of the there's like a tryout scene. It's like early on, and Neiman gets brought in, and J.K. Simmons is like listening to everyone, and he can, because they're not in the studio band, they're in like kind of they're like first year students, like the starting out band, and J.K. Simmons Fletcher comes in to like listen to each group, like the woodwinds and the horns and all that, and he listens for like 2 seconds, and he knows who's good, he knows who's bad, and I think that really like reinforces his character as like you do look up to people who are like experts in their craft or their field or whatever, and I think that enforces like that feeling that Neiman has, like, oh, this guy really knows what he's doing, because he just like he'll have him play like 2 notes and then like cut him off. He's like, nope. He's like, let's. There's like a girl like playing like first chair trumpet or something. He's like, let's see if you got first chair because you're cute, and she like plays like garbage, and he's like, yep, I knew it. Like he just he only cares about like if you're skilled enough. He
Yeah.
has no tolerance for like any tomfoolery or anything like that.
Yeah, and not only does he, it's not even, it doesn't even matter whether or not he can tell immediately. It's what it does to reinforce his persona. This you know, why you should worship me, why I'm so good at this is like, I can tell just from 2 seconds. I don't need to be bothered by your
Why I
bullshit.
have this tiny little mustache?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great scenes that just really establish like his character and like reinforce that like he's the one in control, like he's the in a power dynamic, like he's the one in charge or not.
Yeah.
And everyone has like this great admiration for him. And I
Or
think all
fear.
these yeah, and I think it's like a combination of both. Like but yeah, I think there's a lot of scenes like that that really reinforce that like okay, he's in charge. Like this
Yeah.
guy knows what he's doing and
Yeah. Oh, one of my favorites is when he walks into the studio band for the first time. Everyone's, Neiman showed up there at 6, like he was told,
yeah.
3 hours before, because he's just messing with him and just, um, yeah, that kind of stuff is so gross to me. He doesn't
Oh, it
even
reminds
care.
me so much of my wrestling coach,
Ugh.
House.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very much, he pushed, he called me a little dumb fucking faggot all the time and stuff, but I won, dude.
Whoa.
But yeah, so
What a
everyone
good,
is.
what a good coach.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's like the same. I think you clearly get a lot of that from Fletcher in this too. It's like
Yeah.
he doesn't care about your feelings. He cares about your performance.
Yeah, and and it's funny, he doesn't care about your performance so much as it enhances his, his image and his mystique. He was always looking for that Charlie Parker, but when he does first walk into the studio band, everyone was talking, tuning, and they all stop. They all look down, and there's this great shot where the camera pans over at least the trombone players. Remember the trombone players because the dude with the curly hair.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but
Do you think you're out of tune?
but it pans over everybody, and their eyes are all averted to the floor, are all cast down, and it's silent. And the way the lighting behind him is framed, it's like here is this God in front of his disciples or apostates, you know, worshiping him, giving reverence, and like this is your stage, this is your story type thing.
I got real like military vibes from that. So like I was in the Navy, and like when your commanding officer comes in, they call like attention on deck, and that's like essentially what happens in this. He walks in the room, everyone stands up, and it's just like this sign of respect for someone who's like higher rank is above you. And I got that's exactly what I thought. I got huge vibes from that. It's like you may not even have had a conversation with your like commanding officer like when you're in the military. He's not like really a guy you get to know very well if you're kind of lower down. But when he comes around, like you pop up and like you show him that respect for like the position he's in. And I thought that a lot about Fletcher is like when he walks in, like everyone just like knows like, hey, this guy, it's kind of like you said. I didn't really get that they were worshiping him.
Yeah,
But that's your film background coming out. You're probably gleaning more from that than I did. But I just thought it was like a big like show of respect because that's what you do in the military. You pop up when the big guys come around.
yeah, and it might be me reading too much into it. There's just so much religious subtext to the history of film, just in general. The world used to be more religious, especially in terms of its artistic expression and in terms of its construction of myths. So the myths themselves contain a lot of that religious imagery already. So you do get a lot of shots in a historical sense that mirror those ideas.
Yeah. What do you think? So Jaden mentioned earlier that like he goes at this like I think it's like the I think it's is it the trombones?
Yeah.
Yeah, for like being out of tune, right?
Yeah. He's like, so he's asking. He's like, I hear someone out of tune like while they're playing, and he's like, whoever it is, just speak the fuck up. And, like obviously nobody wants to be that person.
That's a terrifying situation
Yeah.
to be in. Like no one wants to be wrong,
Yeah.
and no one wants to be wrong in front of people,
Yeah.
like their peers who they're supposed to be like this great band, you know?
Yeah. And like you can see the fear struck in just everybody's fucking face. Like it's like no one has any idea if they were the one out of tune or not.
Yeah.
And then he goes up to the guy who was out of tune. I guess I have no idea. Well, he ends up telling him like he wasn't out of tune.
No,
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, were you out of fucking tune? He's like, yeah, yes sir. He's like, why the fuck didn't you say so? And he's just so aggressive, man.
Well, yeah. And so then he's yells at him to get out,
Yeah.
and then he's like, by the way, he wasn't even out of tune. He like points out a different trombone player. He's like, you were the one out of tune. But he was like, the fact that he didn't know is worse. And it's like it just shows like how seriously he takes this. Like,
Which is so weird because it's the opposite of what he just said. You know, he was saying, you're either. Oh no, he did say. So I find it strange though that he did say not knowing is worse than intentionally trying to sabotage the band.
yeah, because he does get mad because he's like either either you're too dumb to know you're out of tune or you're intentionally sabotaging my band. Like,
Yeah. And but not knowing is worse, which I thought. I don't know. There's a difference I think between volition and incompetence, and I feel like incompetence is easier to be fixed than willfully being out of line.
I just think
I don't know if I agree with that because I believe the reason why he says that is because like he could see how one of his students would disagree with him or dislike him and would intentionally sabotage something, but that's okay. Like, yeah, you're a dickhead like me, but at least you're intelligent enough to know what you're doing. Someone who doesn't know, you have no fucking right to be here.
Well, yeah, and I think it's like if you don't know you're out of tune, then it's like that's also bad. But if you can't even tell that you're in tune, I think he's also just as mad about that. So
Yeah.
it's like he was in tune and he still was like too scared in that moment to realize I think what was going on. I think
Yeah.
that just
It's double speak. It's
Yeah.
there's a specific term that that's used for. It's not no-win games. It's something like that. Basically, whatever your answer is wrong, and that's the language of an abuser, setting you up so that no matter what you do,
Lose-lose situation.
exactly. There's something. There's another term for it even, but it's exactly that in terms of a dynamic. It's no matter what you say, there's no good answer. You're still gonna get berated because you've been presented with this situation.
yeah, no, I just think that he just shows that you're kind of wrong no matter what, but like at least like have the balls to like
Yeah.
stand up. And I think Neiman, that's something about his character. He like gets into it with Fletcher a lot in this movie, and no one else in the band does that at all.
Well, I feel like Fletcher also has Neiman has a kind of false sense of favoritism from Fletcher that he thinks because like he watched him like in a room before he was in the band and stuff like that he's a freshman and all this stuff that he deserves.
I think there is favoritism because I think Fletcher's doing everything he can to help Neiman out, but he expresses that in a way that like he is like hates him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And,
the other
yeah.
thing is too is that Neiman isn't broken yet. Being
yeah.
a squeaker. Well, and that's fun too. Later on in the film, we didn't know what that term meant, but he referred to Sean Casey as someone who just squeaked in, wasn't well known, and just barely made it into the school. So
Oh, shit,
that's
okay.
what squeaker meant.
I thought it was like when you're like young and you got like a squeaky little voice. That's what I thought it was like.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the young kid. He's a little
Yeah.
squeaker.
Yeah, and it could
That's
be.
what I thought it was.
Yeah, and it could be that it functions so well as both either. But I like thinking that since we used specifically squeaking another place in the film to refer to someone who just barely made it in.
Yeah, no, I
it's
like
a
that.
pejorative term.
That's another one where like when I describe this movie to people, tell them about it. I'm gonna tell them that I thought of that, and I'm gonna be like, yeah. Check this out. I know this movie really well,
Yeah, and
and
you know
I'll give you no credit.
that's fine as long as the word gets out. You know, it's like I don't do this shit for fun.
So the other thing I like about that scene, so this is the first time he's in studio band still, and he introduces him as a squeaker and whatnot, and they are gonna play the titular song, the Whiplash. They're gonna start playing it, and there's
That's the
so
name of the movie.
there's so much tension built in that scene, which again, like I don't know how you make a movie so intriguing about fucking jazz, but he's got them. They're all tuned up, and they're all like they're waiting for his cue, and it's like a kind of a slow pan around him, and then it goes to his hand, and he's like about to like count him in and cue him in, and I was like edge of my seat, like oh my god, they're gonna play music. Like I know what's gonna happen, but like I was so ready for it, and it is. I think it's cool because I think there are movies that are supposed to have tension before like a war or a battle or like before some kind of epic event that don't execute it nearly as well as this movie did for just a piece of music.
A
And that's
practice
yeah,
as well.
yeah. And so I was like, oh man, like yes, they're gonna play. Oh, when is it gonna start? I was so excited.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, this the whole way this movie is executed is great. And Calvin mentioned earlier, this guy, I think he's like 32. I think he was 28 when the movie came out or something like that. The director.
I want to say he was 30.
Well, either way, I'm almost 30, and I have not directed a single movie, much less a feature-length film that made $49 million.
and
And so, like, that's so impressive to me to be like, he's young, but like so good at this craft that he just put together a great movie. Like, I'm confident that I mean, I haven't seen La La Land, and I want to go watch it, but because I didn't realize he directed that until a little bit later. But like, I want to see that because he did so great at this movie, and it's something I don't really care about,
Yeah.
like the subject matter in the movie, and so but he executes it so well that I'm like, oh,
That you become interested.
I want to see
Yeah.
like his other stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of the tension that's built up, um, there are strong sexual connotations to everything building up to that. Everyone sucking on the reeds, blowing the spit out of the trumpets and the trombones. All of these very quick rhythmic shots and close-ups on all of the instruments. People with mouths on their instruments. I can't really figure out that's one thing I didn't think about enough. What they're there for, but it was clear that with also the pejoratives that he's using to demean everyone
He
with.
calls everyone cocksuckers the
Yeah,
whole movie.
cocksuck.
Yeah.
It's reinforcing that sexual, like, this is the how, and it's using. I feel like it's using sex as a vehicle to establish the power dynamic. You're gay, which is obviously to him a lesser, a denigrated person within society.
That is not the way this podcast feels.
Agreed. But that's how it functions to him, and it's how it functions as the words. And so to make those visual allegory of matching with the words of what he's saying reinforces the power dynamic of who is above and who is below.
Yeah, I didn't catch that at all.
Me
'Cause
either.
To me, I was
not
just like,
one bit. Yeah.
and it's like you said. I think you said it because you were like, I don't really know what it's there for, and you kind of I think you explained it well. I think it could be there for a reason for sure. I think if you have
It's just not enough in the rest of the film. It's
Yeah,
really only in these practice scenes.
so I guess yeah, I would have never picked up on that, but I don't think it's like important to like really sway how you feel about the movie or the characters or the dynamics within the movie. But like that's an interesting thing to bring up, and again, that's why we have you on.
Yeah, and not only are the subject matter of the shots, but also the feeling of them. I like to think of shots like this as being very tactile. I kind of wish there was a little bit less. It wasn't so rhythmic. It wasn't so quick, because I love film that loves to put the mic right up next to the sound, like the touch of skin on skin. Just, and it doesn't even, not even in a sexual way, but just the hearing that on film, something slow, like this scratch, but you feel it. You know what that feeling is, and like the pitter patter of the sticks on the drum head, and all of that. It's so sensory.
I remember bringing that up when we were talking about Under the Skin.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part like the second half of the movie. There's like so focused on like her footsteps, and it's like it's like
Yeah.
that's another thing. I get you. Were you talking about you want like kind of that tactile, like like really experiencing that sound, and it is just like recorded music because they weren't actually like they were playing, but that's not like what's the audio that's used.
Yeah.
They
So
had different
there
audio.
are terms for that. So yeah, there's audio that is played, and you hear it. That would be called diegetic sound. There is audio that would be post installed, but it's meant to mirror the thing that's in the shot. That's also diegetic sound, and then music that is not being played on scene. Basically, like any type of atmosphere. Like when he's walking on the street and you hear jazz, and there's no band anywhere. That's non-diegetic sound. So it's fun looking at what is diegetic and what is non-diegetic and how that moves the film.
Oh, no, that's see, I love learning this terminology for sure. Uh, so they do this kind of like practice, and then they take a break, and Fletcher and Neiman are in this hallway outside their little practice room, and this is the first time like Fletcher kind of tries to get to know him a little bit, and he asks him like, oh, like like do you have family that are musicians and stuff, and it's I think it's a the scene is not really about what the dialogue is.
So him gathering ammo.
Well, I don't even. I mean, it is that, but so Neiman he has his back to the wall, and Fletcher like leans into him, puts his hand on the wall behind Neiman, and like really leans in, and he's like trying to be jovial and cheerful. He's like, oh, how's your mom or whatever, and he's like, oh, she passed away or she left,
Yeah.
and he's like, oh, what does your dad do? He's a teacher, and he's like, college, and he's like, no, high school. And he's like, oh, and so yeah, he is gathering ammo, but he sounds like he's genuinely interested,
Yeah.
but his body position and like his posture and like his body language is so aggressive. I mean, he's got the hand on the wall next to him. He's like really close, and it's a very to me. I saw that and I was like, that's so uncomfortable. Like he seems like he's trying to be nice, but it's still like establishing like we've been talking about this like power dynamic between them. He's like he's in charge. Like even when he's trying to be nice, he's like really aggressive about it.
Yeah, almost like too forward with how casual he is. Like he's. It's not only is it aggressive, but it also seems to suggest that we're close enough that I can stand this close, right? We're good friends, right? It's basically presupposing that his power moves beyond what would be socially acceptable, and so that he can seem to Neiman like they are better established acquaintances than they really are. I thought that was fun too. Like
Yeah.
both of them, like, and it's just the same thing again. It's the playbook of the abuser. Like I want to sound like it's stuff like that that really makes you know that there's no real redeeming quality to him, because it's not to get to know Neiman, it's to get under Neiman's skin so that he can serve the purpose of being the best musician that I can ever make, and I only care about that.
Yeah, everything about Fletcher's character is manipulating Neiman. Like nothing about it is like like we talked about. Nothing about it is like a warm father figure
No.
who like actually cares. Like
Or
nothing
teaching.
about it. Yeah,
There's nothing. What's so crazy is he's not even teaching him anything. He's just making him he's just trying to break him to the point to go crazy to practice so much. Like he hasn't provided him with a single bit of wisdom throughout the entire film, which is one of the craziest parts.
yeah, you're right. There's like Neiman's in a class for like 2 seconds, and they have like a different teacher, and they want to go through some piece of music, and they're like, oh, go through your scales or whatever. But there is essentially like no teaching in this movie, and it takes place at a school. But yeah, no, it's a good point to bring up there. He doesn't like give any nuggets of wisdom. It's literally just he's just trying to push these guys to like be as good as they can be.
Yeah. But yeah, so another one of my favorite techniques, like throughout the whole film. There are actually two things that I really, really enjoyed that were small, that you wouldn't notice, but they kind of add to the overall atmosphere of the film. The first thing is the passing dialogue. I don't know if you ever caught any of the lines of, like, the beginning of the film, there are two girls that walk by Neiman in a hall, and they say uh, something. Don't want to embarrass yourself, like what's his face? Yeah, truly pathetic. And yeah, but Neiman looks at them because what it is to me is it's this inner monologue, and it's also, I mean, obviously prophetic for this story, but all of those serve a purpose. I'm trying to see if I wrote down any of the other ones. But same thing when they're watching the movie with his dad on the couch, and the dialogue in the film was talking about how bachelors live longer in life, and
What? No, I didn't hear any of that. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
all of it was chosen specifically to either reflect an opinion of the character, or their inner thoughts, or to give commentary on um, the character's life.
Yeah, no, I hadn't caught any of that.
Yeah, that one was one of my favorites.
Hold
The
on,
first one.
I'm gonna pause this for a second. All right, so the next we kind of mentioned the girlfriend earlier, how she's kind of like a sort of a plot device to like move Neiman forward. But so he asks her out. She like works the concessions at the theater that he goes to his with his dad to the movies, and then he asks her on a date, and they go out on a pizza date, and they're kind of trying to get more background on each other, talk about the schools they're going to, and he's like so driven to be this great drummer, and he asks her like, "Oh, what school do you go to? What are you going for?" And she's like, "I don't have a major. I don't really know." He's like, "How do you not
Yeah,
know?"
he's like, you're a piece of shit.
He's
Basically,
like, he's
yeah.
so condescending in this scene, and she's like, gets like upset, and she's like, "What are you going to school for? Like, why do you go there?" And he's like, "It's the best like jazz school in the country." He's like, "I want to be one of the best drummers ever," and he's such a prick. And I think it's again it sets up like the split they're gonna have later, where it's like she's not driven, like she's just kind of trying to figure it out, and he is absolutely driven, and he does know what he wants to do, and it's like he's gonna give this relationship a shot, but he realizes later on like that it's not worth it to him anymore. And I like the scene. There's a lot of like tension in it. I thought where
It's
like
very awkward.
she's
Yeah.
that was my note. I was like awkward date scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's like, well, why are you going in there? And he like has an answer right away, and it just shows like the kind of drive of his character.
Yeah, and it's funny how they. Well, I wouldn't say funny. It's really interesting. It's cool. Yeah, I know. I just too many adjectives. What I love as a device is how they used school names to also mirror status. So his drive is reflected in it being Schaefer. It's the best school. And why'd you go to Fordham? Well, Fordham is Fordham. And his dad.
Fordham is affordable.
Yeah. But also his dad, who is only a high school teacher, went to Carleton, and that connotes something to this fictional universe, and why the family friends who play
Division three
play at a
football.
Division 3 school. It's another reflection of status as equivalent to drive, as equivalent to who you are as a person, who you're going to be remembered as. So another thing, continuing with that, that's the sexual imagery is when the dad of the dude that plays football is at the dinner table, and he's unimpressed with Neiman telling him that he's the studio drummer. He has a piece of limp asparagus pointing at his son, like, yeah, that's cool, but 92-yard touchdown, school record, and just like, yeah, no one gives a shit about your limp dick achievement.
Dude, I think Calvin just wants to get laid. That's why he's bringing it up. He's like, I notice all these sexual references.
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah, I really want to be covered in all that trombone saliva.
Dude, there is a scene, yeah, because they practice Whiplash the first time, and it goes to like a trumpet player or trombone player, but he like releases some valve,
And it's
so
so
much
fucking
spit comes
disgusting.
out.
Just spits
Yeah.
it out. Yep.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so gross.
playing clarinet, it just drips out the bottom.
Oh my god.
Usually it would take all class for it to finally get down there, but you had like a little cloth and
it's
you'd
so
wipe out the
grody.
bell. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I'm
want to
playing
talk.
tuba and it sucked. It's gross.
I want to talk about the like not my tempo scene, where he's just like,
Which one?
I guess.
The first one where he brings him on as a squeaker, and the first time he's in the.
No, it'd be the second one.
So when it's when it's the three of them, when he brought on Connolly as well.
No, I guess the first one with the slaps. That's what I want to get to is the slaps.
That was the first one.
Yeah, and so I was doing a little research on the scene, and the first couple times they went through it, because he's like counting. He's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and he will slap him like before the 4, and he's like, "Am I rushing or am I dragging?" And he's like, "I don't know," and he's like counts again, and he slaps him again, and he's like, "Am I rushing or dragging?" And he's like, "Oh, you're rushing." I guess they first filmed that like a couple times where J.K. Simmons like is not really slapping Miles Teller, and then they were like, okay, I think like we got this down, and they like discussed it just as actors. Like I guess the director wasn't in on it. He's like, okay, like you really need to hit me on this one, and so like the cut that made it into the film is like he's really being slapped. Like J.K.
Yeah.
Simmons is really like laying into him. Like, and it turns out he was rushing the whole time.
It's awesome.
I
Great
love
scene.
little like bits about that in a movie where it's like, oh, like you think this scene is done so well, it feels so real. It's like, well, sometimes it is.
Yeah,
Like,
because he's really getting hit in the face. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of wonder about when he throws the chair. You know, whether that was a depth of field trick or whether he actually threw a chair above Miles Teller.
yeah, he throws a chair in this movie. Like, yeah, J.K.
Yeah.
Simmons is wild in this
He's
movie.
wild. He's also
like,
kind of jacked.
dude.
He's in good shape in this
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, he has this like tight black shirt on.
Yeah.
He's got his biceps busting out. I was like,
like,
oh
man,
my
I
god.
wish
Yeah.
I wanna-
More sexual overtones.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were going on last week about Scarlett Johansson. I came for the J.K. Simmons shot,
oh my god.
and that's always how I tell people to get interested in this movie. Have you ever seen J.K. Simmons' biceps?
Dude, he's yoked, man.
Yeah.
He was working out for the role of Gordon or whatever in Justice League, and there's like pictures of him in the gym, and he's fucking yoked, dude.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. My second leading question, if that one doesn't get him, I was like, do you like jazz?
Also bad.
But yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. So, one thing I noticed throughout the movie is the lighting it's like very like orangey yellow throughout it, and I was kind of thinking like maybe as the characters change or if they're in different situations, maybe the lighting would change to kind of be like a visual cue that they're in like a different state or something like that. But it doesn't. It stays the same way the whole time, and I wonder why that is.
No, it's the color temperature stays the same. We have a very orange, warm tone every time. We'll lead into why it's strange. It's only when they're playing in the band, in either the studio band or in the final scene, and the way that the lighting is shown on J.K. Simmons' face is very much to create the idea of. I mean, you've seen like the saintly icons, how they have those glow.
Like the silhouette.
Like the
behind it,
Jesus
yeah.
candles.
Yep, that is why. That's how he's always shot, with those behind him. And if you'll notice too, the way that lighting is shown on the band, it's a lot darker, to again reinforce those power dynamics. You know, what it is like it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but all of the small things, the editing, the quick touches on all of the instruments, the close-ups, the lighting, all of that is why this film works so well. Like, if you wanted to go and remake a film, like, oh, I don't know anything about movies, I can make this movie. I can just get a really good actor who screams and yells all the time. Like, it isn't as much the script that makes this such a great film. It's also all of these small little details that build the scene without dialogue. Again, without dialogue, which is what's so key. But yeah, the lighting is so important, especially when it comes to the last scene, how it changes. But it's the palette that stays the same.
Yeah, because I think about how different it would look. Like, what if they went like cooler with it? You know, you got a lot more like blue tones and stuff in it. Like, that's just like something that, like right off the bat, I was like, oh, like it clearly is like leaning towards like warmer tones the whole movie. That's like how it's lit, and I'm assuming some of that's like some. Is that all lighting, or do you think it's like some post stuff to saturate it up and whatnot?
Could be post, but it's definitely easier to do that. I don't know what this was shot on. I know the push for digital has been greater in the last decade than it was in the aughts, but if it was shot on film, much easier to do it.
You don't know if it's Super 8 or Super 16. I remember those terms.
Yeah.
From
Yeah,
last time.
we don't really shoot on Super 8 anymore, but
Whatever.
Super 16 we would.
I know what it is.
Is there
Yeah.
a movie called Super 8?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is. It's like an alien movie, and it's
Yeah.
because he has a Super 8 film camera.
Is that why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's because, and that's how he catches the monster.
What the heck? Oh my
Learning new
God.
things every day.
I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
that's also the Super 8 motel.
Yeah. Is it because they film
Yeah.
pornos in there with Super 8 film?
Oh my god.
I don't want to know the answer.
Can't speak to that. Oh, I had no idea.
Won't be googling that.
Wait, so it's called Super 8 because it's based off of the film?
Yep. It's
Why
just-
did the guy who started the Super 8?
I mean, it's just
chain-
I don't. It's probably just I mean, it's just the same thing. It's too much of a coincidence for him to just be like, yeah, it's Super 8. It
Okay.
might have started as some other entity and they just carried over the name.
Heck,
Yeah. But I don't know. So if this was shot on film, then what you do is you get a very light is color sensitive. Obviously, you have LEDs, you have fluorescence. All of those give off a general hue that are a lot more noticeable on film. So if you want like sepia tones or sepia, I can't remember what the proper.
I say sepia.
I say, yeah. Too much Spanish, too much Latin to know what the Americanized version of some words are. But
I
if
think
you want,
whatever you say is probably fine.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's America.
yeah, we can just cut that. And but yeah, so all of it's a lot easier on in production. You just get a color. You get the lights for the set for your whole shoot set up to a specific color temperature, and you'll get that hue from the film. You could put a filter on in the lens camera too, if you wanted a specific, like that's how you get the sepia or like a cyan. Yeah, just this way I won't be wrong.
Just pick one. Just pick one.
Sepia tone filter.
I think it's sepia.
I
Oh my God,
don't.
stop.
Okay, I'll stop.
But yeah, you can or just like a cyan one if you want more of a cool tone. But they'll change everything, and they're kind of cheesy.
Okay.
Like whenever like, oh yeah, when you want to film in Mexico, like you just throw on the sepia filter.
You know what that reminds me of is there's a scene in Tombstone where they're at a play, like in the town, and it's like the devil comes onto the stage, and they put like a bottle
Yeah. I
in
know
front
exactly
of
what you're talking
in
about.
front of the
Yeah.
light to like change the hue of the lighting and everything. It has like liquor in it or something, and kind of wave it around. That's what I think of. Obviously, it's a filter, but
Yeah, that's funny.
what a great movie that is.
I like that movie.
But yeah, and not only is it really easier, depending on power requirements. That's the other thing. It's like a lot of lights in a single room will overload a power grid, so you have to be sure that you know what circuit you're on within a room. So if you are using something that has a lot of wattage, it might be easier to do it in post. But the thing is, it also doesn't look as good. The more things you can pre-plan will look better in post.
Yeah, and everything in this movie looks good. Like,
Yeah, it does.
So I would believe that it was all done like practically in film. I want to talk about the kind of the rivalry that builds up between Neiman and Connolly, who is like he's another drummer who is on like kind of the beginner squad, and Fletcher brings him in to like do like I think it's not Whiplash, it's Caravan. He gave him like the charts for it early, and that's just another way that Fletcher's just messing with Neiman.
Yeah, he
'Cause
brought
it's like-
him strictly to challenge him. Is
Yeah.
kind of my.
Well, and I think it's the
Yeah.
fact that he gave the charts to the other kid earlier. He gave them to Connolly earlier. And so he's had time to look over them and practice. And he's like, yeah, Neiman, we'll just let you hop on. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just another way to, like, push him to be better. Like, he's, like, I think just everything that his character does is just, it's messing with Neiman, but it's all for a purpose. It has
Yeah.
some kind of, like, end goal in mind.
So that was like when I brought up the false sense of favoritism earlier. When he brings him in, I felt like that maybe Fletcher was starting to understand that Neiman was feeling that way towards him. Like, hey, I'm kind of, I'm the fucking star of the show and shit. And so Fletcher brings in competition to show him, like, hey, dude, no one fucking gets this for free. Like, you got to bust your ass.
Yeah,
here.
I totally agree with that. And that's alluded to later in the movie where he talks about, Fletcher talks about Connolly, and he's like, he was only ever, like, to make you
Yep.
better. He's like, never took Connolly seriously as, like, a drummer for the studio band. And yeah, I totally get that. That makes sense. It would be like, yeah, maybe you're getting a little too comfortable. Like,
Yep.
let's make you really earn it, But like, he never really intended to supplant him or whatever.
No. Dude's a stooge.
Yeah, and it really is uncomfortable thinking about the implications of that. That all of them are the entire studio band are just pawns until one of them separates himself. And
Ooh, that's great, Calvin.
yeah, and really why I say that is because the only time he shows emotion was when he finds out that Sean Casey has died. And I mean real emotion, not
Yeah.
like I'm just going to be angry for the sake of being angry.
I thought that was maybe fake.
No,
Because you.
no, it was very, very real because when you go back and he tells the story of how he handpicked him out of the same thing with Neiman and he was a squeaker that got in and he I don't remember his time at Schaefer, but then he goes on to be chosen by the Lincoln Center and he's first chair
Yeah.
in the Lincoln Center. He is his Charlie Parker.
Well, yeah, but then he says that he died in a car accident in that scene, and you find out later that he actually had killed himself.
Yep.
And so I guess the emotion I'm sure was true, but I thought it was interesting. He changes the story that way he doesn't sound like a total prick. This whole
Yeah.
thing.
He
I
knows.
guess I guess fake wasn't the right word. It just I thought it was interesting that
Maybe like a little staged.
he's like, let me omit this part of
Yeah.
it, you know. And,
Yeah, a little bit revisionist, but it's also prophetic.
Oh,
I drive people to kill themselves, and by saying he got in a car accident,
It's not his fault.
no.
Yeah.
That's why Neiman got in a car accident. He drove
Yeah.
Neiman to get into a
To a
car
car
accident
accident.
as well.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. It's like it's not really my fault, He just it happened to.
Yeah.
He just happened to have.
I guess
it.
yeah, fake was the wrong word. But yeah, I definitely thought it was interesting because yeah, you find out later that the Connolly didn't die in a car accident. He was
Sean Casey.
oh Connolly, yeah, Connolly is the drummer. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Sean
yeah.
Casey he didn't die that way, and he leaves that out conveniently to I think help his character out a lot.
Yeah, but so he just brings in Connolly for no other reason as psychological torture for Neiman.
Yeah, this is
So much sabotage
Yeah.
for what seems like would be the ultimate goal of a teacher,
yeah.
but that's not his
He's,
goal.
but he's not a.
I don't think he's a teacher.
not a teacher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like a motivator. Like that's
Yeah.
he doesn't teach them
Yep.
shit.
And
yeah.
it goes back to how we're subverting the notion of the old man archetype. This old, here I am as a mentor with wisdom to here to help you. I'm really just posing as that. He's really more of a trickster archetype. I'm really in it for myself, for something grander and greater
Yeah.
that you
he's
can't
trying to be
seem.
Joe Jonas, I believe, is the conductor that he's trying to emulate or whatever. He's the one who threw the symbol at the other guy's head.
Yeah, Charlie Parker.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then we move on because now Neiman's like extra motivated now. Now he's like, okay, he keeps being told he needs to earn the part, and that's when you get to where he breaks up with Nicole.
Self-sabotage.
And I was watching the scene, and I had seen the movie a while ago, but I was rewatching it again, before we did this, and before the scene came on, and I mean, while he's like explaining why he needs to break up with her, because like he's like, well, I'm gonna want to drum more, and you'll start to resent me, and then I'll start to resent you because you're mad at me for like not spending more time with you, and that'll cause us to like hate each other, and then we'll break up, and he's like, I'd rather just have a clean break, and during his whole dialogue, I didn't remember that she said this, but I was thinking in my head, I was like, well, how does he know that? Like, how can he
Yeah.
just decide that already? And sure enough, like that's the next line out of her mouth. And she was like, you know that? Like, you know that for a fact? And he's like, yes, I do. Like, he's just very matter of fact. He's so laser focused. And I think it kind of goes back to where he has the family dinner, and the one dad asks him if he's like, oh, you don't have many friends, do you? He's like, I didn't see the point in it. Like,
Yeah.
if something is not going to help him become a better drummer, he doesn't care. And I think that's why he cares about Fletcher caring about him, because that's the character who's going to help him be a better drummer.
Yeah.
And that's why, yeah, we keep talking about how this is an insanely abusive relationship, but he like knows like this is how I become better at what I'm doing by kind of attaching myself to this person.
Yeah, there's almost a bit of a enabling on Neiman's part.
Yeah.
I'll let you treat me like this because, and it's really because of his status as and his power. Like if his opinion means a lot, so I will allow him to treat me like this so that I can get what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
Until he doesn't get what he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then we get to I think another great scene where it's another practicing montage, and he's like going really hard, and he starts to get like blisters all over his hands. He's bleeding. He's all bandaged up, and he's got like the ice water in like a pitcher.
Yeah. And he puts it in the scene.
And I thought it was cool. Like, it reminded me of like something you see in like a boxing movie or something. Like you're in this like tough training
Yeah, like the
montage.
fighter.
You're the hero about to like take on this battle because he's about to get ready for like his first like kind of competition. He's practicing really hard, and and he's like got a fist, and he like dunks in the water, and he has, like the blood bleeds into and everything, and it I thought it was cool because again, this is a movie about fucking jazz. But it was a really cool scene that like I thought would be in like it seems like a movie with like a boxer would be in,
Yeah.
or like a fighter is in this, and he is fighting, like he is trying to do everything he can to be great, and it's just interesting to see like kind of I guess the same sort of visual cues I would expect to see out of like a warrior, a battle, like someone about to like train for a tough situation they're in, and but he's on a like a drum kit,
Yeah.
and I think it's a really cool scene where he's like dunking my hand in the ice, because I got to get back at it, and
Yeah.
it's like
He's got to really push his body to the limit, I mean, which he is there.
Yeah.
And he's ripping his skin off playing drums.
and I don't know how many people know this, but like so Miles Teller is like a drummer.
Yeah, he's been playing since he was 15.
Yeah, and he practiced like 4 hours a day, like 3 times a week. Had like a teacher come in, and it's something like 40% of the recorded drums in the movie is Miles Teller, which is amazing because it's really good. And I it's just like you talk about like character actors and stuff, who people like become these characters that they're trying to embody and everything, and like if you can sound like a legit like studio jazz drummer, like that's amazing.
Yeah,
Like you have a lot of talent and a lot of range as an actor. I think if you can also just pull off like this performance like he did, like
Yeah.
Miles Teller is great in this, and like him and J.K. Simmons like absolutely make this movie worth watching. Like,
It is. Their portrayals of the characters are fucking fantastic.
So we talked about Sean Casey, and J.K. Simmons has like that emotional scene about he's died, and he's talking about how he's a great player, and Calvin brought up he's like a squeaker, he barely got in, and he goes on to become this great player, and that's kind of you kind of get the sense like that's what he wants out of all of his, not all of his students, but he's hoping to get like that student that is able to be great,
Yeah.
And after that is when they go to their like first is their first competition.
Yeah.
I
Well,
believe
it's
so,
the only
yeah.
competition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And J.K. Simmons has this great scene. He's like, yeah, so he's like, give yourself like 2 hours ahead because it's out of the city. He's like, save your travel receipts or don't. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
It's just like his character's amazing. He has such great lines in this movie. And the bus breaks down that Miles Teller's on, that Neiman is on, and so he's trying to figure out how to get to this thing on time, and he rents a car. And this is like the big dramatic, and maybe not the big dramatic scene, but it's dramatic because he forgets his drumsticks at the rental car place.
Yeah.
And he shows up and he's super late. And I think this is the first scene where he's like really gets into it with Fletcher, because they're like yelling at each other, and he's like,
he's like, you don't fucking get to play or whatever.
yeah, because he's like Connolly's going on, Connolly's here, and he's like, you don't even have your own sticks. And he's like, it's my fucking part, like I earned it. And
That's
he's
my
like,
fucking kid. Yeah.
I love it. He's like, it's my part, and he's like, Fletcher's like, it's my part, and I decide who I loan it to.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah,
But it's also funny, and I think why the tension builds the way it does is Neiman says, he says, it's my part. I get to lend it out whenever I want. And he says, no, I earned that part. And like, well, I can give it to whoever I want, whenever I want. And like, and he says, if you would have already kicked me out.
Yeah.
I've already fucked up enough. As far as what it would seem like, the way you treat everybody else, I've already transgressed beyond redemption. I'm here because I'm talented, and you know that, and I know that.
And that's where the favoritism.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
gonna say, like
yeah.
Jaden brought that up. I
Yeah.
think it's a great point. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it
And
is
it-
like
And
because
Fletcher's trying to show him that there is no favoritism,
Yeah.
even though like I do believe that there is,
yeah,
because he obviously brought in the guy to compete with him to make him better.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. It's all just like it's all just big brain plays right there. He's just scheming to like push Neiman to be better. And so Neiman gets back in his car, goes back to the rental place, gets his sticks, is driving out, and it's like what Calvin talked about earlier, where it's like foreshadowing about how
Casey.
Sean Casey got in the car accident because he was like so into music and everything, and he's like, the same thing happens to Neiman. He's like just so driven to like get to this concert and like do this thing on time and be the the first chair drummer, and he gets in a car accident, and then it's crazy. And he gets up and like runs the rest of the way, which is
Yeah.
just
It's wild.
Yeah.
The car flipped. He got hit.
He was
driver's
Like,
side.
he was
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah, well, and I think he should have been way, way more fucked up than he was. His hand was a little bit
He
fractured.
had scratch on his head.
Yeah, like, but I mean, dude, he like shouldn't have been in a full body cast.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way he should have been able to get up and, I mean, adrenaline
Yeah, but
notwithstanding.
it makes for
like,
it makes for a really bad scene if he gets into an ambulance and goes to the hospital.
Yeah.
It's a way better scene
Just
later
ends the
on
movie right there.
if he gets to the concert and he messes up so bad and he gets kicked out of the band. He gets kicked out of the
He
school.
can't hold the sticks because his hands are
Yeah.
so bloody.
He gets
Yeah.
a letter later
Yeah.
on where he's been dismissed and like so he's done. Like he's done at the school.
Yeah,
And-
I do. Like, I can suspend my disbelief
Mhm.
because it functions so well.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. It would be boring if it was like, all right, he's done. And then we get to the part where the lawyer shows up because they want to do like a lawsuit against
Yeah.
Fletcher.
He's
because
starting to get his revenge here. He's very salty towards him for kicking him out,
Yeah.
out of the thing.
And that's where you find out that Sean Casey didn't die in a car accident. He died. He had committed suicide, and it's because he was so emotionally abused by Fletcher the whole time. And I like that scene a lot because the whole time, Neiman like doesn't want to, like he doesn't want to go against. He doesn't like
Yeah.
want revenge at first. He's like, he's like, don't make me do this. He says things like that, and like that is so the mind of like someone who has been abused. Like
Yeah.
they are not. You can see it from the outside, and obviously like that's I think our perspective watching this movie is you see this relationship from the outside and you know it's no good.
Like Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like they know, like we know it's bad. They probably know it's bad, but they don't know how to get out of it. You know?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they just don't know. You know, you just don't know that something is as bad as it is until you're out of it, and then you start looking like once that daily interaction isn't there, then you're like, oh, how did I ever not see this? It's this.
Right.
It's really disorienting, and yeah, I think he started to get to that point. He still like understood the role that Fletcher was playing in his life and what he was doing. He also feels that he was kind of using Fletcher's influence as an avenue or as a means to his own end, but it's also he didn't realize how badly it was really affecting him.
Yeah.
Well, because then even at the end of that scene, he's like, just tell me what to say. Because like it seems like he's still not into it at that point, but he's like, I'm gonna go through with it. Like you said, like trying to kind of get his revenge, his one over
Yeah.
on Fletcher. But he doesn't even still like really commit to it. I don't think, because he's like, just tell me what to say and I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's when Jaden mentioned in his kind of recap of the movie. That's when we get to like the scene where Neiman shows up to like the jazz bar, or he shows up to a bar. There's like live jazz music.
Yeah.
And Fletcher's playing at it. He's playing piano. J.K. Simmons really played piano for that. I guess he had played piano before, and then he took some more lessons to actually be able to do that part, which makes sense because it's a really slow
Yeah.
slow
it's
song,
not-
so it's probably not like too tough to figure out, especially if you already played before. But I thought that's cool. It's like there's a lot of like practical use of just having the actor like. It's not like the camera's on J.K. Simmons and then there's like a cut to his hands. The camera's on J.K. Simmons. It pans down to his hands and then it goes back up to him.
And
So
he's
you know
also
it's- yeah,
shrouded in
showing you.
shadow.
Yeah.
I love that, like him, the light is on his hands, but his face is shrouded in shadow. You know, kind of like a fallen angel.
God damn.
Yeah. Crazy.
Dude, Calvin is so good at
He
making.
just finds these things, man.
He's so good at making a movie sound so much better than I can.
I don't even know if that's a good take. You know, like the other thing is too is like some of the more religious connotations with it might be from my own perspective, but it's also just it is a lot of film history like we were talking about, so it's easy to make those assumptions because a lot of people, you know, it's, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, we all learn from the greats. We all take away parts of what they took away, and that's just it's a sequential type of thing, how things slowly change. So that's just how I see it. Lighting on Fletcher is a big deal. You know, it really goes back to that first scene too, where he emerges out of the shadow. You kind of wonder is he good or is he bad, type thing.
Well, yeah, and I think you kind of get that sense throughout the movie. It's like he seems bad, but I think his intention is good. He
Yeah, but just from the lighting is
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think you can draw a lot of correlation between that for sure. So then he gets asked to play in like that jazz festival that Fletcher has like a band going. And he's like, the drummer's not really cutting it. He's like, if you want to get in on it, you can. And I like this part. It goes to Neiman. He's like in his apartment, and he's got his drum kit like put away in a closet. And he just opens the door. You don't see him like set it up. You don't see him start practicing or anything like that. Uh, but then he calls Nicole again to be like, "Hey, I've got this like gig I'm doing," and there's no like big drumming like him training montage. But if you look when he's on the phone, his fingers and hands are all covered in band-aids again. And so it's like I thought it was a cool way to show like without showing him drumming again.
Without
like,
telling, they're showing.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I don't need to see him drum again. I know he can drum, and so I don't need to see him practice again to like get up to like kind of the level he was at before. But his hands are covered in band-aids again, and it was just a cool way to like progress, like show that he had been working on it without like showing me he had been working on it. I thought that was a cool scene.
Yeah. And also, if you pay attention to when he asks Nicole out and when he calls her again, you'll notice that they follow immediately after events where Fletcher gave him a pseudo amount of approval. So the first
So he
time,
feels good enough to reach out.
so it's what it is then is it's the shadow self, the Fletcher, giving approval to the self being Neiman in this case, like, oh, I've finally, it's this psychic equilibrium of confidence coming from the other person, and that's what's so interesting is it's always directly after Fletcher gives his approval, and why that's so important.
Well, yeah, it shows how much he values Fletcher's opinion. Is like when he gets
to his
approval
own
from him,
identity.
yeah, he's like, well, now I'm confident again. And so it's like, yeah, their characters are just so like Neiman is absolutely wrapped up in whatever Fletcher tells him.
I mean, he
Like,
gave
yeah,
up. He put his drums away. He gave up on it basically until he said, "Hey, I want you to do this again." And
Yeah,
it's like I can be myself once again.
he talks about how that cymbal got thrown at the other drummer, and
Yeah.
he was like, well, what would have happened if he just was like, oh, you did pretty good, like,
Yeah.
and then he's gonna go on to be like, okay, yeah, I did do pretty good, and then he never becomes this. Oh, he's like he's not a drummer, he's a
I want to say trumpet player, right?
yeah,
I think
sax
so.
or trumpet, yeah. But then he goes on and does this great solo, and it's because he was pushed to that point, like he might have cried himself to sleep that night because he got a cymbal thrown at his head, but now he's like motivated to be better. And Neiman's like, well, what if like getting a cymbal thrown at you discourages you, and then you don't get to see that like amazing musician afterwards? He's like, well, a great musician would never be discouraged, like that wouldn't stop them. And so that's when he like pulls the drum set back out, and he's like, I'm not going to be discouraged. Like, he's going to keep going, and
Well,
he's yeah.
I think it actually does invalidate his idea that Charlie Parker, a real Charlie Parker, wouldn't have ever quit. And Neiman did quit. The only reason that this is even happening again is because he's given another opportunity, not because he's practicing for practicing's sake. I think it really shows you that Fletcher's entire idea of how you make great musicians is warped. It is the reason that he got fired. It was justified because here you are, you have discouraged someone.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
Yeah, I still feel like it was supposed to be like kind of I don't know, I guess like his redemption to be like, oh, I'm gonna start playing again. I'm gonna come back, and I'm not gonna be discouraged. That's what I took from it. But Calvin's got the big brain. I'm just a smooth brain over here. And so then they're about to play their big show and everything, and Fletcher talks about how he's like, one call from these guys who are in the audience will like make or break your career. He's like, if you go out there and like show out, he's like, you could be first chair in the Lincoln Center, or you could be a part of some other band that I don't know about because I don't know jazz music. But
Or you can not play drums again.
yeah. Or he's like, this will ruin your career.
Yeah, he was like, the one thing about these cats is they never forget.
He says these cats. Yeah.
To make it seem cool, to make it seem chill and casual, like he isn't setting him
Just
up for
constantly
absolute
manipulating
failure.
him.
Yeah. Because he acts way different to Neiman after they meet at like the bar and stuff, and like
it's showing just how depraved he is as a manipulator and as an abuser. Like, I'm gonna be, there's nothing left to earn anymore. There's nothing else that I can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I may as well just be real. We'll talk. We'll be people. And
It's all bullshit.
it was all pretense.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
all
To bring up a this is a scene further back, their first audition, or not audition, their first like competition, and Neiman sees Fletcher talking to like maybe an old student, and he has a daughter, and he's like talking to the little girl, and he's like, "Oh, you play any instruments?" She's like, "Oh, he started piano like last week," and he's like, "Are you gonna play piano for my band?" He's like, "I'll save a spot for you," and he like gives him a hug and fist bumps the girl or whatever, and then he immediately goes into the room with his band. And he's like, "What's up, cocksuckers?" He's like, it is. It's like his whole game is like just how can he manipulate these students to get like what he wants out of them. And yeah, so I think it speaks like your comment earlier. It's like he can put on this like front whenever he wants.
But it's also that front to get what he wants. He wants more people in his band so that he has more opportunities
Yeah.
to produce that person. Like it's just persona. It's all persona. It's really hard actually to say anything concrete about himself from a psychological standpoint. The only thing that we can really say within the context of the film is that he reflects Neiman's shadow self, and that's it. Like we don't really know what he is or who he is, and like what is even the purpose of creating a Charlie Parker. Like why can't are you not good enough to be a Charlie Parker? Like that's the other thing that's kind of interesting, is it's not about his ability to play, it's about his ability to make someone else great. And why is a question that we never get answered.
Yeah, no, I wonder if he's got like maybe he's like not good at playing instruments.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Or it's entirely a god complex. Like literally, it's, oh, I want to make the next Charlie Parker. Or is it, I just want the power, I just want the reverence,
Yeah.
I want to be
Wonder-
venerated.
Yeah, I wonder if he wants to like live vicariously through these like super great musicians that he like quote unquote made.
Mhm.
But then so they get on stage, and that's when Neiman finds out that he does not have the right music for what they've been practicing.
No, so then he leaves. And,
Well,
'cause-
he plays the first whole song.
yeah, he does, because they are. Well, at first it's their music that he knows,
No.
No,
No,
it
it's not?
starts
No.
out of a song he doesn't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
and then
Because the bass player's behind him, he's like, "What the fuck are
What are
you
you doing?"
doing?"
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
he's so mad. Like,
and he comes and he's like, "You little fucker, you think I'd?" He's like, "You think I'd let you do this or whatever?"
yeah, he's like, "I know it was you," like
Yeah.
referring to him, kind of ratting him out, making him lose his job.
Yeah.
Like the whole lawsuit thing. He's like, "I know it was you." He's like, "Do you think I'm fucking stupid?" Like,
yeah.
Yeah. And another connection between the two. I know it was you. I know how this relationship is going to
Yeah, I was
end.
to say this.
Self-sabotage.
This is also just more of like the power struggle that's been going on is just showing that J.K. Simmons' character just has complete power over Neiman.
Yeah, more what I was saying is how they're reflected in each other. So when he breaks up with Nicole, I know how this relationship's going to end.
Oh, okay.
And despite what he thinks he wants and what he knows, he's already made up his mind about how something is going to happen. And the same thing with Fletcher. Like, what is his real aim here? Like, here is a whole band that's basically going to be discounted because they don't have a rhythm section. Everyone's just gonna be focused on like, well, that's fucking weird. And what is his role then? Like, he's not a conductor, he's not a teacher, he's not a promoter. He's just looking out for like to have control over people. What his whole motivation is so strange, and I think that's what's so great about it, is because it's just how people are sometimes. It doesn't need to be explained because they're just fucked up. It's just fucking weird.
Yeah.
And that is that part that really never gets told or explained, doesn't need to, and it functions so well that way.
Calvin just said "fuck" twice in one sentence.
I mean, he threw a chair.
He did.
Dude, wild. I think about after he finds out that he has the wrong music, there's like a zoom on Miles Teller, and the look on his face, he's like, "Oh God," like,
Yeah.
"Oh no." And I try to notice like when filming techniques change in a movie. Like, I think Colin was mentioning that the editing is kind of more rhythmic in this movie, and it's like when it cuts to like different people in a scene, and when it like the camera will swap to someone else based on like who's speaking dialogue, who's playing an instrument or whatever. And there's not like any zooms in the movie, but that one time there's a zoom in on him, and so like I like noticing those things. Like it kind of changes the way the film is viewed, obviously, because like the filming technique changed, but it gives you a different like Like he's coming to this realization that he's screwed, and the camera work helps you also realize that.
Yeah. This I've been wanting to talk about the final scene for a long
Which
time.
we're at.
Yeah,
We're at.
we're
So
there.
finally,
Yeah,
yes,
so let
at
it
the
rip.
climax, and it is so important to the entirety of the film because you have more of that rhythmic editing. You have as they're playing, you get certain shots of like the woodwinds in a row from above. So you have these three people in a row, and then you have the piano keys match on action there. You the same look of things from above. They're just pieces. You have the crash of the cymbals, the sweat on them, and going back like mouths on reeds, mouths on I forget what the pieces for brass instruments are.
Well, and this is so Neiman messes up the first song, and he's gonna leave.
Mm-hmm.
And he, walks out. He is defeated or whatever. Hugs his dad because his dad realizes what's going on. Like this is essentially his career, his dream going up in smoke right now. And then, Neiman turns around. He goes back to the kit, and he just starts playing.
This is where he gains power.
Yeah.
And the catalyst for it is when he takes off his coat.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just
Yeah.
like how Fletcher took off his coat in the first scene.
Showed off his arms. Yeah.
And took off. Yep, exactly. And it really is that like I don't have anything to prove anymore. I'm the one in control. I can take off all pretense of this persona of this of who I am, and I can just be who I want to be because I'm in control. I'm in power.
I think you get a good sense of that too, because Fletcher comes over while he just starts playing,
Yeah,
and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Like,
Yeah.
he's like, it's almost like he's like embarrassed for him. He's like, "What?" He's like, "I know I got you really good,
Yeah.
but like now you're digging like a deeper hole." He's like, "What are you doing?" Like,
Yeah.
Well,
it's,
then
it's
you
the
see-
first break.
And you see his attitude change throughout the scene,
Mhm.
just in his face. Like this is, I think, like J.K. Simmons' best acting in the whole film is during the final scene,
Yeah.
and it's not based on dialogue or anything like that. It's just based on body language.
well, do you see him when Neiman's like playing badly when it starts and he's like messing up,
Yeah,
and he's like bobbing his head like.
yeah,
The
Fletcher's
light.
like, if Fletcher's into it, he's like, oh yeah, like I got him. Like I know this sounds like garbage, but like I got my win or whatever. And he's like into the fact that like he's messing up.
Yep.
And then it totally changes like when Neiman starts playing. It starts to go well, and he's like, oh, this is like serious, yeah.
Yep, and you'll notice too when he first turns around after announcing what is it, Uptown Swing? I can't remember what the song was, but he announces it and he turns back and looks at Neiman, and his head, his
He's like backlit.
profile. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
all blacklit. It's around his head, just like another saintly icon. Here I'm in control. I'm the one with all of the power. I'm God, and that changes as the set goes on. You'll notice that the light dims down, and then as Neiman's decided to start playing, the light comes up on him. Signifying that the power balance has shifted. So now the light on the drums shows that I'm the one with the power. I'm the one who's being looked at right now. And there's a really great scene where, obviously the solo goes on forever, but
And
when
it's
he's finally, yeah, it's great. And when Fletcher just has finally given in, like, I'm just gonna go along with this. I finally like, oh, I have my Charlie Parker. He gets up to conduct, and he's center frame, and the light is no longer backlit on Fletcher anymore. Now it's coming from frame right where the drums would be. Now the light is shining on him, and that's just it's such a great visual way to express that things have changed. We understand them. We take them in subconsciously, and paying attention to them consciously makes it that much better.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think we're analyzing this movie, and I think we like diving deep and figuring out what's going on. But besides that, the music at the end is amazing.
it is. It's great.
It is like it is a genuinely just cool thing to see and to hear, and the way it like cuts between all the instruments, like Count had mentioned, and it's just genuinely good. And I hate to admit this, but like I like bought the vinyl soundtrack to this movie,
And you hate Chaz.
and I don't like this. But I was just so into the sound of this movie. I was like, oh man, it's so good, and I if this movie did anything, it gave me a huge appreciation for jazz, at least like studio jazz. But it's just like if you just are a person who likes music, this is such a great movie to watch. It's so well done. It's so good. Like I think we kind of glossed over that.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is very good.
this is a movie about jazz musicians, and the music is excellent in this movie.
Yeah.
It is.
It's funny because there were actually a few critics that the thing they criticized about the film is that it gave a poor representation of the history of jazz.
I saw the criticisms I saw were people who were jazz musicians who were students at like prestigious schools, and they were like, "This is not a good represent." They were like, "My teachers were nothing like this."
Yeah.
And so
Well,
yeah,
it's a
it's like,
fucking story.
and,
so
and I was like, "It's also a movie.
Yeah.
This is not like your biography." Like, I get it. Like, I don't think every jazz school has a teacher like J.K. Simmons in it.
But it almost
It's a story. Like, come on. Like, there were a
Yeah.
lot of people who were critical of that, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's just this movie is a snoozer if you just have like the supportive teacher throughout it. Like, this is a movie I would hate to watch if
Yeah.
it's just like
dude, you're doing great, dude.
yeah, if it's
You're
any,
not a cocksucker.
yeah.
I don't even know why I used that word.
This movie is instantly less interesting if like Fletcher's character is not set up and doesn't act the way he does.
You know, I think it's easy to say that because we don't, we only know what they put on screen. We don't know what would have been otherwise. I think there's a genuinely interesting way to tell amazing stories about inner turmoil without, narcissism and as a plot device. I think it's really great because it's one of the few it's one of the few on-screen depictions of narcissism in an everyday situation that's just done right. Like, this is a real person. That's absolutely a real person. I could see someone doing that. But yeah, so
I don't know. I
Yeah,
disagree.
I think we- I think we
if,
can, like-
if this movie has no cocksucker references in it, it sucks. He's just
funny
so,
because it's like if it doesn't have the cocksucker.
yeah, 3
Yeah, he's
cocksuckers
just-
out of 10.
he's just dude, that's our new rating system, dude. He just makes the movie so much more interesting. And I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a way to, and that would be an entirely different movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you could tell the story a different way. But the way it's told in this one is great.
It's
It's
fantastic.
fantastic.
And I do think though, it was so fantastic. We said that spontaneously together.
You guys,
But
spontaneous synchronization.
yeah, but I think that's just that's the biggest thing about specific actors. What they can bring to a role extends beyond what's on the script. I think you could have made any type of character with J.K. Simmons in that role, and as long as it's a realistic type person, they could have had an entire range of emotions and personalities, and the film would have been just as fantastic. But this is just a really different type of film that you don't see all that often.
Yeah, he's just brutal, and it's just amazing.
It's awesome. I mean,
Yeah. So and speaking too about color palette, this was the thing that I wanted to talk about when we were comparing the studio band and the end scene with all the rest of the film. I actually feel like it's two different films. The way that it's constructed. You're talking about different color palettes, different rhythms for editing, different types of dialogue outside of the practice scenes. It's completely different. And it wouldn't surprise me. I know it's not the case, but it wouldn't surprise me if you had two different directors directing the music scenes, and
That would be
everything's like-
interesting. Yeah, are there?
No.
Do you have examples is there movies that are done that way?
I mean, you'd probably have to go to TV. TV
man.
has
I guess so. Yeah.
general ones.
Well, because
But
I know like what the Russo brothers did, Avengers and stuff.
Yeah.
But those feel like very cohesive. It doesn't feel like one of them was directing one thing and
no.
Yeah.
a different one is
They
directing the other.
they do every
it seems
movie
like
together.
yeah.
So yeah.
But I
Yeah.
would be interested to see a movie where it's like, could two people like kind of connect a story together? I think that'd be really neat to see.
That is cool.
Yeah, and part of the reason why you probably don't see that is the vehicle of direct or a tour theory. If we throw a name at it, it's James Cameron's Avatar. It holds a different type of of weight as far as marketing than it does just Avatar.
Well, that would be too much for like Hollywood to pull
I
off.
don't think I like any of James Cameron's movies.
But yeah,
The
but that's
Titanic
like,
sucks.
but yeah, that's why you have Stanley Kubrick's. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not like it's a fine story. It's James Cameron, of course. For a long time, I didn't like Leonardo DiCaprio because James Cameron's characters are so flat. It's just there's nothing there.
All right, let's get back on track.
Yeah.
So I think Calvin had some really thought-provoking questions on the ending.
Yeah.
I do
Well,
have one thing to mention
yeah,
real
yeah.
quick.
Go for it.
So during a solo, J.K. Simmons' character refers to Andrew Neiman by Andrew for the first time, and he's like, Andrew, what are you doing?
Right.
And
Yeah.
he seems not only surprised by what Andrew's doing, but like almost that he's surprised that he called him Andrew himself, that Andrew had earned his respect in that moment.
It's almost like it's the first time like Neiman's a person
Yes,
in the movie.
he's
yeah.
not a cocksucker. He's
Yeah.
a human.
it's the
Yeah.
first time too that Fletcher is a human.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. And I feel like he's also surprised by that moment within himself as well.
They're both like Neiman is like validated as like I am a good drummer now.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm the
sure.
one. I'm cueing you in. I'm conducting.
I love
now.
that. I love that he says that. Yeah, he like says that to the bass player. He's like, "Caravan, I'll cue you in."
Yeah.
And like it's like he's running the show
Yeah,
now.
he's got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which we were talking about, like the kind of change in power dynamic there. Like, yeah, I love those. I love the. It's not a big bit of dialogue or anything, but it's
I
really
think
cool.
the less dialogue is what makes the scene so powerful.
Oh, and I have one more thing. Sorry, Calvin. I really want to get to your question.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
So we get to the end, and he's about to cue the band back in after Neiman's done his solo,
Which is awesome.
and they share a look like it's just Neiman and Fletcher looking at each other, and like it's like they finally arrived at that point together where they're like, it's like he recognizes that he's a good drummer, and Neiman recognizes that Fletcher like pushed him to that point. And I love that it cues the band back in, and then it just cuts to credits. There's no like, I love that there's not like a big applause scene, and it's like it doesn't have everyone jumping up like hooray like you did it. It's like all you need is like that look from them, because the movie is really, to me, is about their relationship and how they are with each other. And all he needs is like that validation from Fletcher, and like Neiman just needs to feel like he's doing good, and Fletcher needed to have a good musician, and all you needed was that. You didn't need a roaring applause after they finished their musical piece. And I love that the movie ended there, and not with
Yeah.
some over the top like kind of thing. Well, I mean the ending is like really, I don't want to say over the top, but it's an amazing ending. It's the best
Yeah.
ending I think I've ever seen to a movie. It's my
Yeah.
favorite thing. Like
Yeah.
I'm like I got. This sounds like lame, but I was like, I got like chills. Like,
I got
feel
chills
like
right
down,
now, just
yeah,
like
I
keep thinking about
I like
it.
feel it
Yeah.
on my back, and I was
Yeah.
like, it's so good.
It is
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
now we'll get to Calvin's.
Well, no, I
thought-provoking
do want to
questions.
add on top of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Like,
Go
like
for it.
what's so great about it is like you realize that's the point. When he first gets laughed off stage, basically, also pointing back to that earlier dialogue about you don't want to be like what's his face, so pathetic, of those passing girls at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He gets a hug from his dad. He gets love, support, validation, but he isn't seen. He's not seen for what he is truly passionate about. And I think it's such a big metaphysical question about like human experience. Like we're all screaming at the void that we want to be heard, and no one really understands us, and we're all just talking because no one's listening. And that shot with the eyes is, I see you're a piece of shit asshole that's driven me to this. I see what you are and what you've done. And him looking back, I see you. You're my Charlie Parker. You are, everything that I've been trying to do. And that kind of validation, that understanding of who they are, and that frame too, it's just their eyes. There's no, you don't see their mouths. You kind of see the edges of their mouths, but
it's
the whole,
focused,
the whole point is the eyes. It's that connection, like final, because that's why it cuts there. It's not about the music. It's about being seen and being heard. And yeah, it's weird. It's fucked up, but because that's it's not really the way that it necessarily needs to be, but they both ended up getting what they wanted at the end.
And I think that's part of movies are not good if like you can't relate to them in any way. Like that's my opinion.
I disagree, but yeah, I would say that most people
Maybe not good.
they have a special place. Like Avatar did that for me. I don't
Dude,
feel
will not
that.
stop talking about
Yeah.
Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, like, but that's the thing. Is like, I can't like disavow it. It's not. I can't like. It's a part of my story now. I
Yeah.
can't. It's all about how we rewrite the perspective
Yeah.
of what happened to us, and I just have to take it with a grain of salt that I was a stupid kid at some point.
No, you're good. No, but I guess okay. I think you can have good movies without being relatable, but I think it helps a lot. And
Yeah.
I think
I think
it's
it makes the movie more enjoyable.
like there are definitely times in my life where, so like I said, like I was in the Navy and I try to explain stuff to my family, and I remember like Jaden, I'd like talk to you about like this is what I'm doing, and it's hard because it's something that like no one else is going through, but like what I was going through, and it's a completely kind of different like world to be in. And there were sometimes where I'm like, man, like people don't get what I'm doing. Like I think it's cool, or like I think I'm doing, and I think it's true for everyone. You know, you don't have to like be in some kind of special job for that. But there's sometimes where it's like, you might be doing really good at whatever you're doing, and like people are not like catching that. And, like you want to feel validated, you want to feel like you're doing well. And even though this is about jazz music, and I'm not a jazz musician, I like relate to the Miles Teller character. Like I believe that, especially like the dinner scene he has, where like everyone's kind of talking over him. It's like there's sometimes where like I think I'm doing something like that is really impressive, and like no one's like
No
giving
one
me the
gets
time
it,
of day,
yeah.
or like no one understands like what I'm doing, and so it kind of gets glossed over. And I think that helps this movie a lot because you don't need to be you don't even need to be a musician. You don't even need to know how to play a single note
No.
on anything, and you can watch this movie and be like, oh, I get like this character like
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Like I get him.
Yeah, and that's I see like so much of myself in terms of like like nobody understood me type thinking, not like the obsessive like I'm just gonna be a complete ass to everyone about why I went into film in the first place and why people will ask me like do you ever what would you do for school if you had gone back or something to that effect. I'm like, oh yeah, you don't get it. Like I would absolutely make the same choice. It's not about whether that degree was at any type of market value or whether it was really going to help my job prospects in the future. What it does to your perspective of your understanding of other humans, of the world in general, makes you it'll make you a better communicator, a better friend, a better boss, because once you can put yourself in someone else's shoes, you can see how best to help them and how best they can help you by empowering them. So that's what's so great about film is it's stories, it's emotional expression of human experience. In the more varied ways that you see it, the weirder ways that it's told, the more you start to get a comprehensive. I mean, the more your perspective will be expanded and will make you that much better of a person. So when I sit here and say, "Oh yeah, the mise en scène," I actually don't think I've used that term yet. That's
Nope.
mise en mise en scène is everything within a frame. So everything within the frame is set for a specific reason. That's lighting. That's object placement, character placement. Everything within the frame. And so I say that term like, oh, it's French. It's clearly pretentious. But there's so much of it that you could have a better understanding of film. You could have greater appreciation. You can see more things that will make movie going that much more fun for you. But to some people, it just doesn't matter, and that's fine. It's just like, to be dismissive of someone else's like I could be here and like, oh yeah, Marvel movies are trash. Like objectively, yes, but
Man, let's not get into that right now.
but it's I'm being dismissive as a joke because I can clearly see the appeal of all of these things. There, a lot of it's just escapism. If you want to look at it from a reductionistic perspective, I just want to see a story. I want something fluff, and I don't want to think about anything. But it's also how you see the archetype of heroes embodied in ourselves. I think a wild conjecture would be to say that the Marvel tentpole is going to be our new mythic structure. It has all of the template for being the next the next Greek pantheon.
Where was
the
this
next
during
great
our interview of you, dude? Dude, you had your time. We're talking about Whiplash now.
Yeah, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But it's so important. It's so important because that's the thing. It's like all of that is the human experience, and putting that on film is so important, whether or not it's commercially viable or not shouldn't be the thing.
Right.
But why people go to the movies is varied, and you need to understand why everyone goes to movies and why all types of art construction just say something different. Like if you're not going to give something like Jaden, you were saying about like Under the Skin, like, oh, I'm not going to like this, and then somehow you find yourself liking it at the end. That open-mindedness is the whole point.
I agree with that. I mean, Whiplash is another movie that I went into because they're not. I'm a pretty call myself kind of stoogish when it comes to movies. Like when I want to watch them, like I want to watch fucking cartoons or things blow up. Like that's typically my mantra. Right? But I always find myself like watching these deeper movies and somehow being connected and emotionally tied. Like I mean, it's weird as it sounds. I watched Whiplash. Like for some reason, the whole time I was thinking of Connor, which is odd. Like I don't know why. Maybe it's because you drummed when we were kids. But immediately after I watched it, I was like,
I helped on the kid a little bit.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like,
I mean, I thought the same thing. Like, oh,
immediately after it was done, I texted him. I was like, dude, watch this fucking movie. It's like one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. And he texted me back. He's like, yeah, I love it. Like I've already seen it. And I mean, it's cool that movies can bring us together and like have us show like. I mean, we all three have different perspectives on this movie, but we all three agree that it's good.
Yeah, and only one of us is right, though. Let's remember that.
That will always be me.
Whoever I think is the loudest in the podcast gets
That's
to be
typically
right.
me too.
So
So.
Jaden,
Let's look at the
Jaden takes
waveforms. So I have kind of a cool question. I want to
Ooh.
know what you guys think of. Is this movie a musical,
No.
Connor?
I would say also no.
Why?
They don't sing. That's pretty dumb, but I don't care. That's my answer.
So I think when I think of musicals is the plot is somehow driven by what they're singing about or what they're playing music for, I guess. So I think like a
But isn't that like?
Yeah, I was going to say.
well, no, because I think they could be playing any song. They're playing Whiplash or they're playing Caravan. It could be any song.
Yeah.
It just needs to be a jazz song.
That's fair.
And like I said, I think this we kind of mentioned earlier. This movie could kind of be about anything, as long as you have these characters interacting the way they are. And that's why I think it's not a musical, because you could do this movie without music. This could be about a mathematician and his angry teacher.
Also, I think the name Whiplash is very clever
Oh,
because
so
of the movie and also the car accident.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Look at you, dude.
Yeah.
Big brain on Jaden.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I kind of. Wow.
So yeah, my answer would be no, because I don't. There's nothing inherently story driving in the musical piece Whiplash or the musical piece Caravan or them practicing music. Like that's not driving the narrative. I think what's driving the narrative is the characters.
And the relationship between each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's not a musical for that reason.
Yeah, it's really more music as a novelty. I was really hoping there'd be more debate about this.
Nope.
But y'all seem to be have read up on on your film history.
I didn't even read up. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
That's the definition. The definition of as far as critical theory, a musical is where the songs function as a part of the narrative, which is why.
Oh my god, dude, Jaden,
Yeah.
really
I
smart.
literally
Yeah.
said it's because they don't sing. So if they would have sang, I probably would have been like, yeah, like.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
So
It's like
don't listen to me.
Moulin Rouge and Across the Universe.
Yeah.
Those are
I
not
think I've
considered.
seen both of those movies.
Yeah,
I hate
technically
them.
not considered musicals
What?
because the songs are just songs.
Moulin Rouge has got the Ewan McGregor in it, right? That's
I actually haven't seen it. I just know
Pretty
that
sure it's got
my
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
professor despised it. It's like,
yeah.
yes,
I
he
fucking
is,
hate
like-
it too.
I
I
just
used
know
to hang
that-
out with this girl who watched it all the time.
We're naturally good at critiquing movies
Yeah,
because
the
we
best at
caught that
Yeah.
that subtle bit that this isn't a musical.
Beautiful. But yeah,
So
you're
what would
absolutely right. Like the whole thing, this whole movie is apparently like it's not a term that I've come across before, but it's referred to as a dual film. The same sort of thing with the Lighthouse. This duel as in duel, a fight between two people.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. This could absolutely be about any other. This could be in any other setting as long as you have this character dynamic, like, because that's the point. Like this is what makes it interesting. It's how it's what draws you in. And yeah, you're right on
Yeah,
right on the nose.
So, like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
movie could be easily about like a wrestler and his coach, like, and that's
Yep.
that's why I relate to, is because that's the relationship I had with my coach.
Yeah,
was similar.
you know, it's interesting too. Like when you were talking about the blood, and blood is actually a motif we didn't talk too much about, but how you were talking about blood, and it's like a boxing scene, and like I just think of the cover art for The Fighter with Christian
Right,
Bale.
yeah.
It's the same color palette.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's exactly what struck me in that scene. Is like that is not a drummer scene. Like this is a fighter scene.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In a stripped down like apartment, with threadbare, it's singular drive, and it's interesting
Oh,
too.
we didn't talk about he like moves out of his like dorm room and like lives in like the room where his drum set is. He like moves his mattress down there, takes his alarm
yeah,
clock
we did
down
not
there.
talk about that at all. Yeah.
Like yeah, that's just it, like what Calvin is saying is just this drive to, like he lives with that thing. Like it's there's just so much stuff in this movie. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely.
So good.
But don't take
Well,
our
I'm
word
sorry-
for it.
I'm sorry to ruin your thought-provoking question.
Yeah, I was like, because I wanted to see, like,
Well, I'd
musicals
like to know,
are very like, it can be a fraught discussion depending on what perspective you're looking at.
I think it's not a musical because I like it.
okay. So we know that he directed La La Land was his next movie after this,
Is that-
which is a musical.
That's a musical?
Yeah.
So that
100%.
Oh
kind of-
my god, that makes me not want to watch it so much more.
I think the more you watch good musicals, you'll because I hated musicals too going into college. There is a deeper level to these that really make them interesting. There's a lot more going on that, especially if you watch something like with Bob Fosse, the idea of the camera dancing with the actors. It's so much different than a play or theater, because now you have this perspective, this character of the camera functioning within a musical single. There's a deeper layer there, and which is why I find film to be one of the most expressive mediums, because it's as close as possible to replicating human experience.
Yeah.
A singular human experience. But
I agree. So I think have we wrapped this one up?
I would say so.
it's 10 cocksuckers
Yeah, I was
out
gonna
of
say,
10.
I would say
how
10
many-
cocksuckers
yeah,
out
how
of 10
many- How many
cocksuckers.
cocksuckers do we give this?
Yeah, 10.
Yeah.
I'd say 10 out of 10. This is honestly
Would
one of my
suck
all-time
again.
favorite movies. I think it's one of the best films ever made. So
Yeah, I think when I
You
got older and I stopped thinking like the Godzilla movie that came out in like 1990.
Yeah,
Matthew
98,
Broderick?
98.
I think when I stopped realizing that, like, because when I was a kid, that was my favorite
Oh,
movie.
I
yeah,
love that
absolutely.
movie, dude.
So
I
good.
think when I started viewing films more seriously, when I got older, and this is the first one I watched, and I was like,
This-
oh my god,
this is one of the
like-
first ones to
This is
same,
like a
yeah.
seriously like great movie, and I 1,000% recommend this. And again, you don't even have to like jazz; it's just great because the characters are great.
No,
and
you
the-
don't have to
and
be
the-
related in music in any kind of way. Most people are going to watch this movie and identify with the relationship going on in it.
Yeah, I could not recommend this enough. Definitely 10 cocksuckers out of 10.
Yes, definitely would suck again.
10 would suck again. All right, so before we end this is a little bit of a deep cut. if you are a fan of Avatar: Legend of Korra, J.K. Simmons voices a character named Tenzin in it,
Ingsun.
and someone did a dub of J.K. Simmons like incredibly vulgar lines from Whiplash, and then dubbed them into like a video with Tenzin speaking them. And Jaden sent me this video, and it's amazing.
It is just, it's fantastic, dude. Like, I don't know how hard these people like looked through the Legend of Korra just to match up the scenes with
Yeah.
his vocals.
I mean, the editing is just.
It's fucking
it's so
fantastic,
great.
dude.
They just had me watch it to give my critical eye to it. It's just
It's
So-
amazing.
film
So,
festival worthy.
The link will be in here,
Yeah.
and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Also, and it's that much better if you've seen both. If you've seen
what I'm
Whiplash
thinking.
and Legend of Korra.
Yeah.
So if you plan on watching Whiplash, I would watch Whiplash first before you watch this video, because it might ruin some of the sheer organic magistry of some of these lines.
Yeah, definitely watch Whiplash movie. I don't necessarily think you have to watch Legend of Korra to enjoy this, but
Yeah, it's so great.
yeah, it's
And again,
awesome.
this is a deep cut.
Yeah.
If you really like both of these movies, like
But
this movie and this series, it's so funny.
Yeah,
It
if
is
you're
awesome.
still with us at this point in the podcast,
it's incredible. And so I think with that we've that was basically what the podcast was about, was to get to this YouTube
just this
video
one point. Yeah,
about J.K. Simmons as Tenzin. That
we
was
could
it.
done the whole podcast just on that.
So I think we're gonna talk about like what we're watching lately. All right, so I just finished Project Hail Mary. It's by Andy Weir. He wrote The Martian, which everyone loved. That was his first book, which is crazy because it was turned into a movie.
It's
like
the
almost,
movie with Matt Damon.
yeah,
Right?
it was like instantly turned into a movie. Like it's a great book. It's my favorite book. And then he wrote another book called Artemis, which is fine, but this one is really good. It is very heavy on science, but it's like explained in a way that like anyone can read it. Like I've taken physics and I know enough about biology, and those are like really heavy themes in this book. But it's all like kind of explained to like a layman. It's all broken down. I know I commented about I talked about a different book I read last time, and it was very technical and it was not easy to follow. This is very easy to follow. Like the first chapter of this book is he's like experiencing heavier than Earth gravity, and he just kind of wakes up and he doesn't know why it's happening. So he works out, like, is he in like a centrifuge? Like, is he spinning around? Like, why is he experiencing this? And like the first two chapters is just about that,
Neat.
and it's fascinating because it's broken down in a way that like anyone can understand. And if anyone's familiar with like his writing style, it's very and if you watch The Martian, it's like there's a problem and then there's a time where he like kind of figures out how to like resolve that problem, and that's a lot of what this book is. The main character is maybe not like my favorite or great, but the problems he runs into and then his solution for them are awesome. And I was enthralled the entire time. I was like, because again, I listen to these in like audiobooks while I'm working, and I was just like into it. I was so into it, and yeah, I think it's a great book. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you've read his other books, I think this is great to listen to or read, whatever you want to do. I love this book, and I love that it's very science-based and all the science seems really practical, but it's like not like too like it's not like built up. It's not too gaudy. It's not like too hard to understand. It's a great book. I love it. It's very, very cool sci-fi, and I think everyone should read it. And so that's what I got. That's what I've been doing lately.
Nice. What was the book called?
It's called Project Hail Mary.
Okay. I don't remember if you said it or not, but now I do remember that
I
you
did.
did say
I
it.
did, right
Yeah,
at-
you did.
Right at the beginning.
All right. I mean, I've been I've been watching some Netflix. Watching Master of None with Aziz Ansari, which I'm a big fan of. Before season 3 just dropped like a couple days ago. I've been
Oh, fuck. There's a third season of that?
yeah, it just came
Yeah.
out.
Oh, man. Okay, I like
Yeah.
the first two.
Yeah,
for
I'm
sure.
a huge fan of it. So I just got done, finished watching season 2 because I was rewatching to catch back up, and I got into the first episode of season 3. It doesn't seem as good.
Oh, really?
yeah,
Yeah.
I actually just read a review of that on The Atlantic because I have no intention of watching it, and what it was talking about is the role of basically the theme of relationships ending as story, and how it's we're so often thrown into the middle of the ending of a relationship.
Yeah.
We don't really understand why they got together in the first place, or what was redeeming. Like why do these characters care for each other?
Yeah, it seemed very, very out of place.
Yeah.
It was just thrown in. I didn't even really know where the story was going right off the bat, so it was weird.
Yeah.
But a huge fan of
Apparently-
the first 2 seasons. I mean, if you haven't seen the show, I mean, you should check it
That
out.
kind of bums me out because I liked the first season a lot. I thought the second season,
It was not as good.
Was not as
Yeah,
good.
because the relationship with him and Rachel, I think, is
which is I
girlfriend.
thought
That
was
was
the core
awesome.
Of, that's like the core of the
Because, like,
story.
honestly, like, every relationship I've had is very similar to that. It's like, why the fuck am I doing this?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, oh man. Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll still watch it.
Yeah,
and
I'm still gonna
I
finish
can't
it
believe
too.
I didn't know it was out because I really liked
Yeah,
the
it
first two.
just came out.
Okay.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, and then I've been reading this book called Non-Zero by Robert Wright. Non-Zero, the logic of human destiny. And basically what it is it's game theory applied. So the idea that all interactions between humans are either zero sum, a winner and a loser, or non-zero, where there is a mutual interaction that where something else is created. So rather than just I buy something from you, you sell something to me, I have gained this commodity and you have gained money to support yourself. There's also this extra layer of trust and communication that has been exchanged to this, and how the idea of this simple interaction being applied to all of human history is how we get to the point where we are, where we keep getting larger and larger bodies of governance, thinking of going from tribes to chiefdoms to city states to countries, and why it's almost there hasn't been a stopping point at any point in human history where it's like, okay, we've taken this too far. This is as far as it extends. Everyone thinks that it kind of undermines all the idea of nationalism in general, because any country that has ever focused on its own nationalistic identity and identity and eschewed its role in the world has eventually fallen out. They've gotten older faster than everyone else, and they haven't stayed up to date with technology.
Are you
So-
fucking talking shit about America right now?
I mean that's at a part, like, yeah, like the thing is like we're such a young country and we think of ourselves as exceptional. We're so young. When
Yeah.
you compare.
Isn't it pretty exceptional that we're so young? But
And then we're just
a
the
superpower?
fucking best.
Yeah, exactly.
Kidding.
But
We're
that's
like
the
maybe
thing.
top 5, dude.
I mean, if you look at education, we will
not
not
even-
be top 50 in like 50
But if
years.
you
I'm not
look
even
at
talking
it-
education. I'm just saying, like, I mean,
But if you
just to live here, you know?
if you look at nuclear bombs, we're like right at the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's so important
And
because we
that's-
use those in
And
everyday life.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's actually a big theme in the book. Is it's talking about, rather than a big impetus for why technology has advanced, is the idea that we were always waging war and we always had to protect ourselves. What if we rethought war rather than waging it? Why not wage peace and seek those types of avenues to drive?
Fucking book was written by a hippie.
That sounds very un-American, Calvin.
I mean, he is American, so there's an American tinge to it. But yeah, it takes the idea of why families work well and applies them to societies in general, and the logic is the same at both points.
This is not a narrative book. This is a
I mean, no.
okay. I'm just making sure.
I'm pretty interested in
This
it,
is not like
honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like a not someone like my book is narrative. Like it's a
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
about
So this
something.
isn't. This is more. So game theory is the idea of sum zero and non-zero sum games as applied to human interaction. So if you want to understand, you don't really need to understand game theory to understand this book, but it's just a fascinating concept of of why we are moral without religions. You know, why do we find the same behaviors and the same progress in every human civilization throughout history? It's because every single interaction that moves us closer and closer to technological advancement is the same. The ones that don't, the ones that hold back the transfer of data, and technology in general, don't stick around.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I think we all had pretty interesting ones to bring up. I mean, even though, unfortunately,
Yeah, I'm a little bummed, but
it sounds like Master of None is maybe not as great in the third season. But
I'm still
think
gonna
that,
finish
yeah,
it.
I
But
think these are all things that are worth
no,
taking a
I'm
look at
actually
for
very
sure.
interested in that book.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know. You'll have to let us know how many cocksuckers Master of
Yeah,
None
I mean,
how
season
first
many?
3
season's
is.
like an 8 out of 10.
I don't. Okay, so on our scale, how many cocksuckers equal one Sebastian Stan? And how many Sebastian Stans equal one Baron Zemo? Because that's
Yeah.
been our rating system
Yeah.
so far.
Oh my gosh, and we gotta throw the Scarjos in
Yeah.
there. Like,
Oh man, so nothing is equivalent to ScarJo. So
Yeah,
let's get
so
that
we,
out
we
right
need
now.
to come up with some kind of.
don't worry, we'll have it. We'll have a
Yeah.
spreadsheet and a link.
It's
Our
about
ratings.
6 cock-sucking Sebastian Stans.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Oh man. Yeah, visual.
So there's a lot of art on the internet between him and Falcon, so that's a thing.
Love that expression. You know.
So I have heard.
So I want to kind of end this with we don't get a lot of comments on these, and that's fine. But if someone wanted to comment about a movie you want us to go over, maybe it's your favorite movie, maybe it's a movie you haven't seen and you're on the edge about, and you want
Or
to,
even like a series.
yeah, and you want to hear us talk about it, I would be totally willing to. I mean, it doesn't matter what it's about. I'll check it out.
I would
Yeah.
love to shatter your dreams.
Literally, first comment will be a
Yeah.
movie that we talk
Yeah,
about. I mean, it
probably
could
actually.
fucking be Fantastic Mr. Fox. Like, I don't care.
Wow, that's actually a
That's
good
actually
movie.
Very good
I mean,
movie,
it'd be interesting to talk about like Wes Anderson in general and his style in general. He's
Yeah,
very
He's got
unique.
something. I'm not in love with this movie. So.
Oh man, yeah, but then we should talk about it because that would create such great conflict.
But yeah, no, I'd love
So on
to.
the next episode,
I'd love to hear what anyone else. If you have an opinion on a movie and you want to hear us talk about it, or if you've seen something you really like and you want to hear what we think, I'm totally down. I'm not gonna watch a video about like an instructional video on how to wash a car. Don't tell me that. But if you have like a real thing you want us to watch, I think we're all game, and
please do.
I'd love to hear what you guys had to talk about. And with that, I think we're coming to an end. So I'm your host Connor, and I got my co-host Jaden.
and today we have former guest Calvin.
Thank you for having me on again.
He will be on forever. So.
Thank you for having me on forever, and thank you for listening to